So it's a wonderful honor for me to be here with you. I want to first extend thanks to the many, many, many people who have worked together to bring us here and put on such an important program. And the program just preceded me with a music. And the music that we heard is a universal language. And social emotional learning is another universal language. So I am from New Jersey. Rutgers University is a state university of New Jersey. And I'm involved with many national organizations, and I've been doing this work for about 40 years. And so what I want to share with you, though, is very personal. So I'm not going to be talking with you about anything that I haven't lived. And by that I mean that when my own children were younger, one of the first things I did was to go to their schools and make sure that those schools were implementing social and emotional learning. And when my daughter moved to a community in New Jersey with my grandchildren, one of the first things I did was go to their schools and make sure that they're carrying out social and emotional learning. And the reason for this is what I want to speak with you about. Why all schools must do this. And I would like you to be listening to me with that in mind. Why must we do this? Not why can we do this, might we do this, why it is essential. So I want you to think ahead. The second lens I want you to think about is the future. Our children today are going to occupy adult roles in a world of incredible and increasing complexity. It is our job to prepare them. And so think about what skills and dispositions are needed for our children to be prepared to embrace the complexity of the world into which they will grow. We have children now who are in early elementary, preschool, kindergarten, first grade. We have to see them to the point where they graduate, where they throw their hats in the air with tremendous pride and then go out to lead the world. Will they be ready? And my case to you is that unless we prepare them with social and emotional competencies and character, from the very earliest moments of their entry in school, we are not doing the job that we need to be doing. 21 years ago, the International Academy of Education and UNESCO commissioned this booklet about academic and social emotional learning. They began to understand 21 years ago that academic learning and social and emotional learning cannot be separated. They cannot be separated. We knew a lot 21 years ago, and we have learned a few more things. So I want to mention that this PowerPoint, as well as those of my colleagues, will be put on the website of the association. So you will have full access. And I'm not going to go into every single thing on the PowerPoint because I purposely put some things on for you to read about and carry out at your own leisure. But we are going to talk about some of the things in this 21-year-ago booklet that we have learned about since then. So these are the skills of social and emotional learning. This diagram is based on the work of CASEL, Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. They are probably the leading authority in this field, and these are skills that are necessary for school and life success. Not just school success, life success. And these 5 skills are not a program. They're not an invention. They are within us. They are within us from the moment we come into this earth, and they stay with us until the moment we leave. It is a way of talking about how do we manage to navigate the world. We are all using our social and emotional skills at every moment. We are thinking about our own feelings as we're here in this room. We are managing our emotions. Those of you who want to blurt out something are controlling yourself. Those of you who want to leave are controlling yourself. At every moment, we are managing our emotions. It is such a vital skill. Social awareness is another skill that we don't think enough about. It's about being able to take the perspective of other people. It's about being able to have empathy for other people. How many of you here are teachers? Teachers? Many teachers? How many of you work in a school in some capacity as a teacher or not? Can you imagine a classroom without empathy? Can you imagine a classroom where the children are not sensitive to the other classmates? No, of course not. Can you imagine in your own workplace not being able to work effectively in a group? We can't imagine that. And finally, the other skill that is so important in the future is problem solving, because the issues of today are going to be followed by issues of tomorrow that we can't even anticipate. So we can't just give our kids content knowledge. We must give them the flexible problem-solving skills they need to operate in the future. I'm going to skip this slide and the next slide. These talk about some of the details of how to recognize a good social and emotional learning program. And I will tell you very simply, just study what the Village does, and you'll find out what a good program is like. So I would like you to think for a moment about your time in school. Think about a subject that you had a hard time with. Maybe it was algebra. For me, it was certainly algebra. For me, it was algebra, it was physics, it was almost any science. Think about what emotions were involved when you were trying to master a very hard subject. This is the answer key. No, it's not really the answer key. But this is an article by David Brooks, who writes for the New York Times. This is not a psychologist. This is not a social worker or teacher. This is a columnist for the New York Times. And what is he saying? Look at all the emotions involved in learning something like algebra. There is dread, there is confusion, delight, worry, hopefulness, hopelessness. If you cannot manage the emotions of learning, it's very difficult to learn anything. And so this is why this becomes so essential for our children. It turns out that data from the World Economic Forum and a number of other places show that employers want children, employees who have SEL. And not only that, there's a lot of data in the United States that show that parents do also. And here's something very interesting. You know, the dropout rate in college in the United States is about 50%. Half of all children who go to college drop out. They were smart enough to get in, but they weren't emotionally intelligent enough to stay. And so what is the research telling us? It's telling us that college completion is what's important. Not just getting to the college door, but getting through the college. And that turns out to be a function of your social and emotional skills. And here's something else that Dan Goleman, who wrote the book Emotional Intelligence, found out. He said that it's one thing to get a job, it's another thing to advance in a job. And what is the most important skill for advancing in your job? Social and emotional skills. So when we want to understand the why of this, we need to be looking at many, many different sources of information. It's also now an international phenomenon. So you have my permission to take out your phones and look at www.selday.org. International Social and Emotional Learning Day is coming up on March 8th, 2024. And I expect to see Taiwan on the leaderboard. All you need to do is share the wonderful work you're doing. Let the world see what is happening here in social and emotional learning. You're doing so much. Share it. And of course, when you share it at this website, you also learn what's the rest of the world doing. What else can we learn? How can we all get better at this? There's no competition here. Everyone has to win. Because if we don't win, our children lose. Right? So I want to talk to you about some of the work we have been doing in the United States on what we call SEL 2.0. And that is what we call social, emotional, and character development. The reason for that is that we know skills are important. SEL skills are important. They're like the wind, the sails of a boat, or perhaps they are like the propeller. But that's not enough. A boat has to have direction. And that direction is the rudder, and the rudder are the virtues, the character. What kind of a person are you? American President Theodore Roosevelt, many years ago, said, "To educate a person in mind, but not in morals, is to educate a menace to society." Very smart people with no moral compass are a great danger. So we have to be clear with our kids. And why are we doing this? Because every voyage needs a destination, and the destination is positive purpose. Every one of our children wants to have a positive purpose. They walk into school every day, and what do they want? They want to make a positive difference. They want to know that someone knows they're there. And you know what? And we know this because we're educators. If I can't make you notice I'm there for a good reason, I'll make you notice I'm there for a bad reason. But I need you to notice I am there. So we need to help kids discover their positive purpose. And it all depends on the climate of the school. The climate of the school is very, very important in determining how this journey goes. Are we a school of caring? Are we a school of support? Are we a school of harmony? Or are we a school of stress? Are we a school of too much competition? Are we a school that puts achievement over caring? When that happens, this journey becomes more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. And the research that we've done shows that skills, values, character, and purpose all combine to create better outcomes in youth than any one of these things alone. SEL 2.0 basically says you have to think about the emotions as well as the skills. So let's talk a little more about this caring, climate, and purpose. All right. So here's what we know. We know, because we all know that we have one brain, right? We all have one brain. I hope we all have one brain. We have one brain, and it's completely interconnected. It's not like what's happening on the left side of the brain, the right side of the brain doesn't know. It knows. How many of you either work with in school or have at home as one of your children a preschool child or a middle school child? Right? Now think about preschool and middle school children. Are they more emotional or more cognitive? They're more emotional. And so what do you think happens when they go into class, into school? They take off their coats, they put it in their locker or their cubby. They take their book pack, their book bag, they put it in their locker and their cubby. But they don't take their emotions and put that in the locker and the cubby. Their emotions are with them all the time. And in fact, Emotions are the gateway to learning. They open the doors for learning or close the doors for learning. The best academic instruction you can provide will not get through to a child who is highly stressed, highly afraid, highly depressed. So you see, the mental health and learning of our children are completely intertwined. And so what does that mean? It means that when kids walk in the door, they have to be greeted with a caring environment from the moment they walk in. And the classroom they walk in has to be a place of caring, because that is what opens up kids to learn to their best potential. And of course, when parents are equally supportive of that, it's even stronger. And then the kids need to have an opportunity to learn specific social and emotional skills. They need that opportunity. It doesn't just happen. There needs to be intentionality to it. And these are things that we know how to do. And then we have to recognize we're in a new world where kids have to show curiosity, because the problems of the future will not be solved by doing things from the past. Kids are not only going to have to answer questions, they have to ask questions, because they're going to be in groups where it'll be essential for them to ask questions. And they're not just going to get feedback. They have to learn how to give feedback, because they're going to be part of teams that need to grow from learning from each other. They're going to need to be good problem solvers, as I said earlier, and here is something so essential, that they have to learn how to communicate clearly and proudly. I even have to work with my college students at Rutgers on how to send an email to a professor. They will sometimes send an email to the professor that will say, "Hey, Prof," a very shorthand email, very informal. And I will answer them and I will say, if you want a professor to open your email, you cannot say, "Hey, Prof." You cannot even say, "Dear Professor." You have to say, "Dear esteemed Professor." You have to say, "Dear future Nobel laureate." Then they will open up your email. But this is what kids need to do. They have great ideas, and they think that if they just like something on a social media, that's enough. That's not enough. They have to learn how to communicate clearly, proudly, competently. So think of social, emotional, and character development as a universal catalyst. It is what makes our valued outcomes happen. It's not something separate. If you're a math teacher, it will help your math teaching be better. If you're an art teacher, it will help your arts teaching be better. If you're a science teacher, it will help your science teaching be better. In every single way, it helps our valued outcomes to happen. Schools without social, emotional, and character development is like the air without oxygen. You cannot have a school without a positive attention to social, emotional, and character development. So what does that mean? Here's what it means very specifically. And I use the term quasi-post-COVID because who knows if we're post-COVID or not, right? Some of us are wearing masks, some of us are not, some of us are more vaccinated, less vaccinated. It's all out there. But the most important thing is that it has created a difficult emotional climate. Many of our students are coming in anxious or depressed. So what do they need? SEL, SECD tells us they need to be seen and heard. We need to make a special effort to make sure all of our students are seen and heard. We need to be in a place of sharing, mutual helping, and a climate of comfort and respect. Our students need respect. Even our young students need respect, but certainly the older they get, the more they need to feel respected. They need to contribute. They need to not just be in the classroom. They need to do something for the classroom. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about sense of purpose. We need to be reassured and have optimistic future-mindedness. We cannot let our adult cynicism, if we have it, infect our children. We are seeing too many situations around the world where children are badly infected with adult cynicism. We need our children to be optimistic and to be reassured. They need to be positive about their future. I worked with a middle school in a city in New Jersey where we asked the students, how many of you think you will have a healthy future life? 50%, half of the students said no. How can you learn when you don't believe you're going to lead a happy, a healthy life? What is your incentive to learn? What is your incentive to do preventive health? Right? So we need to be able to receive and give caring, kindness, help, and appreciation. Our classrooms have to be places where our children help each other. They're not in competition with each other. They're in competition with the greater world. They need to pull together, be together, work together, have the opportunity to not just show individual achievement, but group and collective achievement. That is what our kids need. And they need to be understood with empathy and compassion. In other words, we have to give them what we call the benefit of doubt. We're not sure if they're really as troubled as they seem. Well, it's better to think they are as troubled as they seem and to work with them on that basis. Empathy extended provides many dividends for us and for all the children we work with. In the United States, we have 180 school days. And so kids come to school for 180 days, and they want to be successful, recognized, valued, and supported. So how do we make sure this is happening? We want to think about things like, to what extent are all children showing caring and kindness and helping each other? As our societies get more diverse, we have to make sure that the opportunities are given to all children in our classrooms to be helpful, to be cared about, to be treated kindly, to have opportunities for leadership. This is what's going to help our children be ready for the larger world as they get older. Next. So this is what I was alluding to earlier. William Damon, researcher at Stanford University in the United States, has talked about the importance of noble purpose. It is a stable and generalized intention to accomplish something that is meaningful to the self, but also is consequence beyond yourself. What Damon has found, and many others have found as well, is that we are not here on earth for us alone. It is not all about us. That mental health involves doing something for others. That a mentally healthy person is a person who has a chance to contribute to something beyond themselves. And so, knowing this, can we see ourselves as igniters of our children's purpose for positive character, contribution, compassion, and citizenship? So this is the lens that I have. When I see a kid, I think about, what is their contribution? What is their character? How am I going to help them become the best future citizens they can be? American writer and humorist Mark Twain had a saying that I really like. The two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you know why. that all of us need to have that sense of purpose. It's not necessarily that your purpose is stable for your whole life, but when you don't have it, you're adrift. You're lost. Think about your own life. Think about how when you've had a sort of a career change or some other wrenching change that has caused you to doubt. You're not at your best. You're not going to be able to learn efficiently and effectively. It's highly disruptive. Having a purpose is critical. So let's just talk a little bit about the latest ways we have understood it's important to activate skills in academics. So the issue now is academic curriculum is very full, very full. We don't have time for one more thing. So that's why it's important when we have some SEL lessons that the kids get, that our instruction, the rest of the time, reflects SEL and activates what it is that those wonderful lessons have provided. So that we're adding SEL in, but not on top of what people have to do. So that means, next, that means that we need to help our kids approach learning with a sense of service and contribution, that they become active learners. That, for example, when we think about history, it's not enough to learn historical facts. Students must be engaged in history, transform it, and actively bring it into the present. They must understand as a story the purpose and context of past events at that time. So this is a deeply engaging mode of instruction that activates children's SEL. So I want to give you an example. It's a technique that we call yes, no, or maybe. Very simple, but very, very powerful. It starts with a statement. And here's the statement. People can learn to change their behavior. A simple statement. The question for you is, do you agree with that statement? Yes. Do you disagree? No. Or are you not sure? Maybe. So I'm going to ask you to think about your answer, and in a minute I'll tell you how to respond, right? If you say yes, don't move yet, don't do anything yet, but if you say yes, I'm going to ask you to stand. If you say no, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. And if you say maybe, I'm just going to ask you to stay seated with your hand down. So yes, you stand. No, you just raise your hand sitting. Maybe, you just stay seated, hand at your side. Okay. Ready? What's your answer? People can learn to change their behavior. Yes, no, or maybe. You're standing if you say yes. You're sitting if you say no, and you're sitting with your hand up if you think maybe. All right, just look around the room. We've got a lot of yeses, very positive group here, very positive, very good, right? If we were in school, in a classroom, I would say this. Everybody who said yes, don't do this now. Everybody who said yes, go over there. Everybody who said no, go over there. Everybody who said maybe, come over here. And then I tell you, in a group of 2 or 3, share. Why did you say yes? Why did you say no? Why did you say maybe? Then people report out. Here's why I said yes. Here's why I said yes. Here's why I said yes. Here's why I said maybe. Here's why I said no. And so you hear from your peers all kinds of reasoning that's different from your own. You start to understand everybody doesn't think the way I do. And then some people in your class that you didn't know, you now talk to them. And you hear their opinions. Okay, you may all sit down. Thank you. You can take a stance while acknowledging peers' similar and different opinions. Now, after the reporting out, by the way, what does the teacher do? The teacher says, thank you, and please go back to your seats. There's no summarizing. There's no editorializing. There's no this was right, this was wrong, this was crazy. The idea is for peers to share and hear each other. And as you watch this happen, you'll notice that one child never reports out from their group. So you're going to go to that child and help that child feel the confidence and develop the skills to report out. And so this is a tremendous opportunity in what takes 5 minutes for social and emotional learning to take place. And it is completely integrated into the curriculum. Going back to algebra, a yes, no, maybe question before a math class. You're just starting a unit on algebra. The yes, no, maybe question for your kids is, algebra is something that I know I can master. Yes, no, or maybe. Very powerful. You could do that before any class. So, all right, that's the mechanics which we talked about. Let me show you the next one. Next one, please. All right. So if you're studying something, right, you do a yes, no, maybe, round 1, then you engage in studying whatever it is you're going to study, and then you have the kids come back and answer that same question again, right? You'd like to think that after your instruction, they feel more confident, right? But there are many other ways to do this. For example, one of the yes, no, maybe questions could be, I like the way the author wrote chapter 6 of that book. I like the way the author wrote chapter 6 of that book. Yes, no, maybe. All of a sudden, we're going to have a discussion about maybe you would have written it differently. How would you have written it differently? Imagine in history, kids thinking about the decisions that were made and having to say yes, no, maybe about those decisions. So maybe all of a sudden, they start to rethink what happened. They see themselves in history. History becomes something that not only was past, but it's something I can talk about. I can talk about how history could have been different. And this is just the most simple and basic of these techniques. Next, please. So this is another technique. It's called PLAN, and it's about making sure that kids have a problem-solving strategy. Now, there's nothing magical about this problem-solving strategy of PLAN, but it is important that all of our kids have problem-solving strategies. They need for us to help them have a framework, a heuristic, a rubric for solving problems. And when they learn it, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade, when they learn it and they leave school to go to college and the workplace, they have it. But they didn't just learn it in 12th grade, they learned it all the way up. That's why it's so important. Here's an example. One of the most exciting things we're doing is showing the integration of all of these different instructional strategies into visual and performing arts. So take a look at these 2 pictures. The yes, no, maybe question is, there are no artistic differences between these 2 pictures. Then you have your kids. They say yes, they say no, they say maybe. And they start to talk about what's different in these pictures. Right? Next one, please. All right, just take a look at these pictures for a second. Think about what's the same in these pictures. Think about what's different in these pictures. Now think about how you've exercised SEL skills in just doing that analysis. How SEL skills help you become a closer observer. How you notice the differences in the food. How you notice the way the couples are standing. There's a couple in each one serving food. But here the male is on this side, here the female is on this side. Right? You notice that the foods look a little different, that the ethnicity looks a little different. These 2 guys are the same in the way that they're looking at the camera, but he's got a backwards baseball cap on. So these kinds of things, which are completely consistent with your visual arts curriculum, activate very important SEL skills in your kids. So I will tell you that, well, let me go to the next one. Yeah. So you can also use plan to analyze this. That one. This is good. We're good. So you ask yourself the question when you see a piece of art, what problem was this picture intended to address? It turns out that in this particular case, the two pictures I showed you, the first one, the older one, was intended to address the fears of the American public during World War II. The title of the picture is Freedom from Want. And so it was addressing fears about hunger. The second picture that we saw was also about freedom from want from a different perspective. But then the key thing is we ask the children, do your own picture. How would you depict this? What would be your way of showing freedom from hunger? And of course, you could pick anything, but the idea is that the kids understand that a picture was intended to address a problem or an issue. They come to learn when and where was the art created. What was the context in which the art was created? What feelings do you have while viewing the picture? How are the different individuals in the picture feeling? How can you tell? I see how we are developing kids' emotional recognition skills, not by doing anything separate from our curriculum, just because they happen to be taking art where SEL instruction is in and not on top of. And this can be applied to anything, history, current events, books, scientific discoveries, etc., as well as any music, dance, theater, sculpture, and other artistic forms. It is a tremendously valuable strategy. This is the stuff you can read on your own. This is the detailed analysis of the picture using the plan framework. Okay. So now I'd like to ask you to take a moment and reflect, which is a very important SEL skill, on what you are taking away from what you just heard. It is very critical to develop that as a learning habit. What am I taking away from this? Now, you will get cards at some point that will enable you to jot down the questions that you have so that we can address them when we have our panel later on. But it's a long time before we'll get to that. So that's why it's important to think, what questions do I have and what am I taking away? Because you're going to hear a lot of things over the course of the day. And so to organize yourself, to reflect after each one and think about what are the key takeaways I'm going to have, that's the way you retain. And that's an SEL learning strategy. So I want to leave you with this thought, that children are like flowers. They grow toward the light. We are the light. We are the source of light. We are the ones who help our children grow in a positive, strong direction. Next. And that's my contact information. Happy to follow up, and I appreciate your kind attention. Thank you.